She locked eyes with me and said, "You'll either take out those stakes, or it's $50 a day." Picture hearing that while you're staring through the trees at a pool glittering on land you literally just bought at a county auction. I wasn't angry, at least not yet. More stunned, like the forest itself had gone silent, and I was the only one who realized something was very, very wrong. My mouth went dry, hands damp, while she smiled. Casually, like nothing unusual was happening. Like I was the unreasonable one for even questioning. Tell me what you would have done in that exact moment. Standing there with proof of ownership in your pocket while someone tried to gaslight you about your own property. I'm standing in woods that should have been untouched. Auction receipt folded in my pocket, GPS unit in hand, coordinates double-checked. The county listing had called it abandoned parcel by the lake. No structures. Perfect spot for a future cabin, except through the trees, sunlight bounces off glass. Stone steps. Water sparkling. Not the lake. A pool. My first thought, did I misread the map? I pulled up the parcel overlay on my phone. ID 4723, Riverside Lot. GPS locked on. I was right where I was supposed to be, which meant that 3-story mansion with its glass walls overlooking the shoreline, its stone exterior, its infinity pool, was sitting on my land. I froze there, staring through the pines. You ever get that feeling when paperwork doesn't match what's right in front of your face? According to the deed, I'd bought forested land that needed clearing. What I was actually looking at was imported stonework, sleek glass barriers, and the hum of a saltwater filtration system beside a pool. Someone had poured serious money into my woods without asking. The whole scene felt unreal, like I'd wandered into someone else's dream, on land that legally belonged to me. Then she appeared. Mid-40s, blazer-sharp, clipboard tucked under one arm, perfectly polished despite being out here in the trees. "Oh, you must be the new owner," she said brightly. "I'm Diane Mercer, ARC Chair and Treasurer for Lakeview Estates, HOA. Isn't this wonderful? Our brand new lakeside amenity!" She gestured through the clearing as if unveiling a prize. Saltwater infinity pool, imported stone, 8-foot glass rails. This will raise property values for everyone by the lake. Families just love having water access. Her enthusiasm wasn't fake. She actually thought I'd be thrilled. But the amenity she was showing off stood right on my lot. GPS coordinates and deed left no doubt. Parcel 4723 was mine, and she was acting like I'd shown up for a community tour. I bit back the urge to correct her. Something told me to let her keep talking, to see how deep this went. So I nodded. "Impressive," I said. "How long's it been under construction?" "About 6 months," she answered proudly. "We're just wrapping up before summer." She spoke like she was showing off her garden, not a multi-million-dollar build on someone else's property. I wondered if she'd ever even looked at parcel boundaries before approving this. Near the access road stood a project board. While Diane kept talking about summer pool parties, I quietly photographed everything. Performance bond number, contractor details, all of it. If this went south, that documentation was going to matter. Then I started dropping pins at the parcel corners with my GPS. "What are you doing?" Diane asked, her tone tightening. "Marking property lines," I said. "Your property." She blinked. "This is HOA common space." "We'll see," I told her. I strapped a time-lapse camera to a tree facing the pool. "What's that for?" She pressed. "Sharper now. Documentation." Her smile faltered. The confidence in her body language slipped. Just a little, but enough to show she was beginning to doubt herself. I saved the parcel map on my phone and studied the posted permits. Something didn't add up. The sign listed parcel ID 4732. My deed? 4723, 1 digit off, a single transposed number. That's the difference between their property and mine, and they had poured over $100,000 of concrete onto the wrong lot. I snapped another photo. Diane clutched her clipboard tight, eyes following me now, realizing I wasn't just some clueless buyer. That evening, in my truck, I drafted a letter to the HOA board. "I am Evan Brooks, record owner of parcel 4723 purchased at county auction. I've noticed active construction on this property. Could you provide permits, site plans, easements, or proof of ownership?" Signed it, kept it professional. No accusations, just questions. Sent certified. 2 days for delivery. Deep down, I already knew the truth. If Diane really owned the land, she wouldn't have looked so lost when I staked the corners. She genuinely believed the HOA controlled that lot. Later that night, I opened satellite maps, dropped in deed coordinates, the pool's deep end, 6 feet onto my parcel. Checked 3 different sources, county, cadastral maps, Google Earth Pro. Same result. Unless satellites were lying, that pool, those stairs, that pavilion were on my land, and the deed was ironclad. $18,000 at auction had just bought me an abandoned lot, except instead of brush and logs, it now held a mansion and a luxury pool. Someone's 6-figure mistake had become my legal problem. At the county office, under buzzing fluorescent lights, I asked the clerk, "Full permit file for parcel 4732, please." She frowned. "The HOA project?" "That's the one." She handed me a thick folder. I flipped through. Permit applications, site plans, structural reports, inspections, bond rider. Every single document had the same number, 4732.1 typo. One careless transposed digit. And the HOA had built an entire mansion on the wrong lot. I highlighted the error, requested certified copies of everything, paid the fee, and walked out holding proof, every permit tied to the wrong parcel. 3 days later, an envelope arrived. HOA letterhead. Notice of violation. Mr. Brooks, Section 7.4. Unauthorized survey and obstruction of access. Remove stakes within 5 days or $50 per day. Signed, Diane Mercer, Treasurer. $50 daily for staking my own land. Land I'd purchased fair and clear at auction. Land likely not even under HOA jurisdiction at all. Classic intimidation move, but I wasn't new to surveying. I knew exactly what jurisdiction meant, and she didn't have it, so I filed my evidence, said nothing, and let them think I was intimidated while I gathered more ammunition. At a coffee shop later, Diane crossed her arms and sneered, "This parcel is under HOA authority. People like you always think you're special. We're tired of entitled buyers claiming land off Google Maps. Submit your challenge to Compliance Council if you want, but good luck with that." She flicked her blazer sleeve like brushing me off, then walked away like she owned the place. Fine. I filed formal records requests, owner affidavits, ARKey minutes, bond details, temporary easements, paid the fees, all stamped, all official, then drafted my reply. "Ms. Mercer, I am the record owner of parcel 4733 per attached deed. Your permits list parcel 4732. Clarify exactly which parcel your project sits on jurisdiction-wise. I bought mine at a county auction. Show me the paperwork that proves the HOA has any authority over this lot. The stakes mark the legal boundaries. They stay put." Evan Brooks, email sent with attachment. Felt good hitting send. Calm, professional, firm about ownership rights. No threats, no anger. Just facts and pointed questions she couldn't answer without admitting the structure was built on my land. The HOA didn't own it. My public records request came back in a manila envelope. I flipped through in the truck near the bottom. Temporary construction easement. Read it 3 times. Issued September 15th, 6-month term, expired March 15th. Purpose, temporary access to the neighboring parcel for equipment staging. Then came the inspection log, pool excavation dated March 22nd. The easement had run out a week earlier. Everything after, concrete, tile, glass, took place when they no longer had legal rights to step foot on my woods. I set the paper down, staring at the wall. This wasn't just trespass. This was documented proof, black and white, no gray, an expired date followed by unauthorized construction on my land. A temporary construction easement is simple. Like if you need to build a fence and step onto your neighbor's lot, you ask permission for a short term. That's what a TCE is. This one was good for 6 months. They used 8. Those extra 2 months meant the pool was built on my property without permission. I made 3 copies of the easement, red highlighted the expiration date. This wasn't about fuzzy boundaries. It was black and white. Permission until March 15th. Excavation. March 22. 7 days late. 7 days illegal. Every cubic foot of concrete, every single tile set after that was unauthorized. The kind of mistake that ends careers, that kicks off insurance claims, that makes lawyers sweat. Drafted a notice to the HOA board, Building and Safety, Dawson Construction. Subject, unauthorized construction on parcel. 4723. Documentation shows permit for 4732. Work occurred on 4723. Easement expired March 15th. Excavation. March 22. GPS. confirms encroachment into my woods. All activity after March 15th lacked valid authorization. Evan Brooks, owner of record. Certified mail. 3 copies, 3 addresses. Everyone saw it at once. No time to coordinate stories. No chance to plead ignorance. Record established, time-stamped, certified. 4 days later, the phone rang. "Mr. Brooks?" the voice said. "Rick Dawson, Dawson Construction. Got your letter about the boundary. Think there's a misunderstanding. Filing amended site plan. Based on what survey?" I asked. "Documentation to the county by week's end," he said, then hung up. I logged into the county portal. Sure enough, Rick had filed an amended plan. Boundary line shifted south by 1/2 meter, just enough to slide the pool back onto his side. I printed it, then called John Carter, because Rick had just made a very dumb mistake. You don't redraw property lines on paper because the concrete wound up wrong, especially not on land purchased at auction with a clean deed and recorded pins. That amended plan was an admission. They knew the pool crossed my line. They were trying to fix it with paperwork instead of reality. I studied Rick's new map, almost laughable, like he thought boundaries were flexible, negotiable. Draw them wherever they made his pool legal, but that's not how deeds work, not how surveys work, and not how my land works. Coordinates are coordinates. Pins are pins. You don't erase them with pencil strokes and wishful thinking. I folded the amended plan into my evidence file, next to the original wrong parcel plan. The expired easement, Diane's threatening letter about my stakes. Every document deepened their mess. Rick had just handed me another, proof they knew about the boundary problem and chose to lie. I snapped a photo, sent it to John, FYI, contractor attempting to alter property lines without surveyor certification or owner consent. Original coordinates remain valid per county records. Plain factual. Let John handle the official side. He'd explain why you can't redraw land on paper to fix mistakes. Meanwhile, I'd keep documenting, keep stacking evidence, building a case that would make resolution lean heavily toward the rightful landowner. Me. This was beyond trespassing now. 30 a.m. mist clung to the trees like smoke. Crews gathered at the clearing, boots crunching the wet ground. I showed up with a thermos and a crisp survey map in hand. Walked the line, my GPS stakes still there but sprayed over in harsh orange-yellow tape strung between trunks. Work zone. Authorized personnel only, as if spray paint erased legal boundaries. One worker spotted me. "You can't be here," he called. "Restricted area." "This is my property," I answered evenly. "Those stakes mark the line," he muttered back. "Don't know about that." "Not supposed to be here." I pulled my phone, pulse steady. "Time to escalate," called the number on the permit. "Mr. Carter?" "Evan Brooks. I own parcel 4723. Active construction happening on my land with an expired permit. Crew painted over my stakes." "Can you confirm?" His answer was short, certain. 20 minutes. "Wait by your vehicle," the crew hammered on, pretending nothing changed. 20 minutes dragged like an hour. Doubt crept in. What if the records were wrong? What if I'd misread? I watched the live feed on my phone. Concrete prep on ground, I was 99% sure was mine. But that 1%, that's the part that keeps you awake when someone builds a mansion in your woods. Then a county truck appeared through the mist. John stepped out, tablet in hand, tape measure on his belt. Calm, deliberate. "Mr. Brooks," he said. "Show me." I walked him under the pines, pointed out the deed, the GPS coordinates, the painted-over stakes, the expired slip, the photos from before. He scrolled the permit on his tablet, unreadable face. But I saw it, the small tightening of his jaw when he reached the easement section. That told me everything. Something was off. "Access slip expired March 15th, John said slowly. "Excavation March 22nd, 7 days after," I confirmed. Silence. 10 seconds, heavy as stone. He glanced from stakes to tablet and back. "That's a violation," he said finally. 2 words final. "Unauthorized work on disputed property. Stop work until resolved," he told the supervisor. "Concrete scheduled." "Can't stop," the man snapped. "Can and will," John replied flat. Not a debate. Fact, he held up the expiration date. The supervisor's face shifted from defiance to worry in seconds. He turned away, phone to his ear, probably calling Rick, already dreading it. I kept quiet, watching mist curl higher. This was John's show now. I was just the landowner. While he logged notes, a younger worker sidled up, eyes darting, voice low. "Hey, man, Yesterday Rick told us to paint over those stakes. Said the line was wrong. Thought you should know. Then he slipped back into the noise. He didn't have to tell me. Could have stayed silent, but he chose honesty. If this ever went to court, he might testify that Rick ordered evidence covered up. At the gate, John pulled a red tag. Posted it clear, stop work. Beyond scope of permit. Boundary dispute under review. Photos taken, GPS logged. Nobody touches this site until certified survey and ownership check, he told the supervisor. I didn't gloat, just nodded. Thank you. One more thing, John added. To issue occupancy, real owner must sign. Who signed the affidavit claiming ownership on this permit? Don't know yet, I said. Filed a records request. Check closely, he warned. If someone falsely claimed title, that's another problem. Those words stuck. Not just trespass, not just expired rights, fraud. 3 days later, an email from the HOA, ARC Administrative Review. Mr. Brooks, your attendance requested at meeting to discuss project resolution. Tuesday, 2 p.m., Lakeview Estates office. Signed, Diane Mercer, ARC Chair. I doubted ARC even had authority over my parcel. Bought at tax auction, clean deed. But I was curious what Diane would try. What excuse she'd make for authorizing a mansion and pool on land they never owned. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Let them sweat. But a bigger part wanted to see her face when I laid out the evidence. Wrong parcel number, expired easement, painted stakes, stop work order. I arrived early at the community office. Small conference room. Diane stood by the window, papers spread, refusing to sit. Rick came in next. ARC, the group that signed off on projects like this. Diane's tension sharp. Evan, I'll be direct, she started. You're blocking 2 years of work. 32 families waiting for this pool. Minor lot line adjustment. Standard procedure. Shift boundary a few feet. Everyone wins. You keep your land, we keep the amenity. Her voice carried frustration, tinged with desperation. Lot line adjustment requires both owners' consent, I replied evenly. Like moving a fence, you need both neighbors to sign. So who signed for me? Silence. Then Diane admitted, We filed the owner affidavit. Let me see it, I said. She hesitated, glanced at Rick, then slid it across. Header read, Owner's affidavit, notarized. I read slowly. I, Diane Mercer, treasurer of Lakeview Estates HOA, affirm under penalty of perjury that the HOA is lawful owner of parcel 4723 and authorize construction of community improvements per permit B 2024-8847. Her signature. Notary seal. Date 8 months ago. The room froze. She had sworn under oath that the HOA owned my parcel. Not permission. Not easement, ownership. The very lot I'd bought at auction. Land they never had title to. This affidavit says the HOA owns parcel 4723, I said, my voice deliberate. She said it was required to move the permit forward. A formality, she called it. Formality, I repeated back to her. Under penalty of perjury, silence. When exactly did the HOA acquire this land? I pressed. Diane shifted uncomfortably. We didn't buy it, she admitted softly. We thought it was part of the common area. It's just been woods for decades. There it was. The confession. They had built an entire mansion based on nothing but an assumption. Diane's face drained, her voice unsteady. Oh my God, she whispered. I never actually checked the title. I just assumed. She collapsed into a chair. Assumptions don't equal ownership, I told her. An affidavit is a sworn statement. It only holds if the person signing actually owns the property. Otherwise, it's fraud. I pulled out my phone and opened the county's property records. This parcel sold at tax auction 3 years ago. Before that, it was private, but abandoned. At no point did the HOA ever appear on record. I turned the screen toward her. You never owned it? You assumed? Then you swore under oath claiming otherwise. Her hands trembled. She wasn't malicious, just someone who had made a catastrophic mistake. Rick finally broke the silence. Diane, did you verify ownership before signing? No, she whispered. A single word, but it hit the room like a stone. She'd signed that the HOA owned my land without so much as checking the records, pulling a title, or confirming anything at all. She thought empty woods meant common ground. That assumption might cost her everything. Her credibility, her position, and maybe even her freedom if prosecutors decided to pursue fraud. That afternoon, I mailed 3 packets. One went to John Carter, a copy of Diane's false affidavit. along with the tax sale deed for my forest lot. The second went to Paul Martinez, a bond claim notice citing fraudulent ownership paperwork tied to the project. A bond claim tells the insurer that the contractor built on land they had no right to use. The third went to the county clerk, a request for investigation into a false affidavit filed about my property. Filing fee $12. Just $12 to activate the legal system, the insurance system, and the possibility of criminal charges, all because Diane signed a single paper without verifying ownership. 5 days later, a yellow certified envelope arrived in my mailbox. Return address, Martinez and Associates Bonding. I tore it open at the kitchen table, heart racing as I read. Bond number 8847TX09. Claim investigation, Mr. Brooks. We received your notice regarding construction on parcel 4723 without valid authorization. We are opening a formal investigation which will include ownership records, permit files, affidavit validity, and a review of the construction timeline against easement dates. Please contact our office within 5 business days. Paul Martinez, Senior Bond Agent. Bonding companies don't send certified letters unless something is very wrong. For the HOA, this was about to become very, very expensive. Because once insurance steps in, fraudulent property paperwork isn't just a mistake. It's money lost. Sometimes it's everything lost. At 11 a.m., near the waterline by the woods, Paul Martinez met me at the access road. Mid-40s, professional, firm handshake. Mr. Brooks, he greeted me. Let's walk the site. We traced the property line together, leaves crunching underfoot. I laid out each piece of evidence. My deed, the plat map clearly showing parcel 4723, GPS-tagged photos of survey markers, the expired easement, Diane's affidavit, the stop work order, even a time-lapse from my camera hidden in a tree. Paul paused at the overlook, eyes fixed on the glittering pool. That's serious liability, he muttered. Performance bonds guarantee lawful completion. If not, my company pays. This one's worth $135,000. He tapped a folder against his hand, then set his laptop on his tailgate and typed quickly. Subject line, Bond 8847TX09. Project demand recipients HOA Board and Rick Dawson. The email listed the facts. Construction on parcel 4723 without valid authorization. Owner's affidavit falsely claiming ownership. Easement expired before work began. County stop work order still active. They had 15 business days to prove authorization or provide a remediation plan. Otherwise, payment would be suspended. Paul hit send, CC'd me, and said simply, official record. The clock starts now. 4 days later, my phone rang. Diane's voice came through, tight with strain. Evan, about the project. I'm listening, I said evenly. This has gotten out of control, she blurted. The bond is threatening to cut funding. Rick's crews can't keep working. 32 families already paid assessments, expecting the pool this summer. That's unfortunate, I replied calmly. But if you sign a boundary adjustment, we can resolve it. You'd keep most of the parcel, we'd keep the amenity. I'll even guarantee no HOA fees for 5 years, I cut in flatly. So you want a strip of my land? Only a few feet along the water, hardly noticeable. It's my land, I answered. Silence stretched. Then she tried one last angle. Money? We can negotiate a payment. I want exactly what I purchased, I told her firmly. The entire parcel, free of encroachment. Her reply came sharp, almost desperate. Impossible. The pool's already built, I didn't budge. I didn't build it on my property, she hung up. For a brief moment, I almost pitied her. She hadn't meant to ruin herself. She'd simply signed without checking a title and let Rick pour concrete on someone else's land. A flicker of temptation crept in, money for just a sliver near the water. But I shook it off. It was my property. Principles matter. Those few feet weren't just dirt. They were proof that deeds mean something. 2 days later, Paul emailed again. Evan, during review, we uncovered another problem. Diane approved 3 change orders, premium stone, imported glass, luxury upgrades, totaling nearly $40,000. No board votes on record. Liability just deepened. So it wasn't just the false affidavit. Diane had also bypassed oversight, burning through community money on her own decisions. A pattern revealed itself. Reckless with finances, reckless with authority, reckless with property lines. Not one mistake, systemic disregard for rules. Paul followed up once more, his message clipped. Evan, the HOA has shown no proof of authorization. Rick hasn't certified a new survey. Stop work remains in place. If this isn't resolved, the bond will enforce remediation. That could mean full demolition, $60,000 to $80,000 from bond funds. But there may be alternatives. Let's meet, demolition. A mansion and infinity pool ripped down. I pictured a wrecking ball smashing glass rails, stone crumbling, rubble scattering across the dirt. Part of me wanted to see it. Another part knew better. Insurance avoids destruction if there's a cheaper way out. And Paul wouldn't call a meeting if bulldozers were the only path forward. That night, an email arrived from John. FYI, certificate of occupancy requires an ACE-built survey and the legal owner's signature. Attached was the form. Halfway down, owner of record signature, followed by a single blank line. That's when it clicked. Why Paul wanted the meeting. Why everything had ground to a halt. The certificate of occupancy, the final key. The document that stood between unfinished construction and a usable amenity. It was the one thing Diane could never supply. The one thing Rick could never fake. And the one thing they absolutely needed, mine. With it, I held all the leverage. Without my signature, that glittering pool and mansion were nothing but $1 million lawn ornament hidden in the woods. My stomach turned cold for a moment. What if I'd missed something? What if my deed wasn't as airtight as I thought? But no, the paperwork was clear. The dates were ironclad. Victory didn't feel like celebration. It felt like silence. A heavy folder of documents. The quiet realization that the fight was already over. This wasn't just trespass anymore. It had become something bigger, something with real consequences. Another email from John appeared. Mr. Brooks. For final approval, County Code requires as-built drawings certified by a licensed surveyor, plus the true owner's signature. Construction remains under stop work. I opened the certificate link. Mid-page, I certify I am the lawful owner of the property described above, and all work is completed per approved plans. Signature. Date. That single empty line froze the project in its tracks. Diane couldn't sign. She wasn't the owner. Rick couldn't. He was just the contractor, and I never would. Without that one signature, the project was dead. An occupancy certificate is like a birth certificate for a building. It declares a structure real, legal, and safe. Without it, nothing can be lived in, sold, or transferred, and that blank line locked their $1 million dream in limbo. The only way forward was with the property owner's approval. That was me, and I refused. 3 days later, John sent another note. FYI, it read, Diane Mercer submitted an occupancy certificate signed as the HOA rep. His comment was calm, matter of fact, cannot process without the actual landowner's signature. Per Code 124, supervisor review initiated, forwarded to management with recommendation for denial. She had signed for land that wasn't hers, pretending her role gave her authority over mine. I let myself savor a flicker of triumph, 5 seconds of a smile, before getting back to work. That single blank line had placed the mansion in permanent suspension. Not long after, Rick uploaded his drawings to the public portal, but they were missing a surveyor's seal to verify the real boundary lines. I gathered every piece of proof for John. Time-lapse footage from the camera fixed high in the tree, its digital fingerprint showing no edits. Video of the survey monument set long before construction. The evidence was clear. The work crossed over. The structure stood almost 7 feet past my southern line. A licensed independent surveyor confirmed it with GPS. His sealed report shredded Rick's revision, exposing his numbers as worthless. I packaged everything and sent it by email to Rick, Diane, the board, and John. Subject line, Occupancy Certificate Permit B2002248847. The decision was blunt. Denied. Ownership remained contested. My consent was absent. The drawings lacked certification. An outside survey confirmed encroachment. The stop work order stood firm. No occupancy. No use, no transfer. Until resolved, the permit was dead. Without the certificate, there was no future. Any attempt to move in would trigger immediate code enforcement. The denial wasn't just paperwork. It was solid, unbreakable. The mansion stood paralyzed, an empty shell, because one thing was missing, my signature. And I still withheld it. Reading Paul's bond documents again, I saw it spelled out with perfect clarity on page 4. No bond release, No payment until lawful completion and written acceptance by the landowner. Plain English, until I signed, the bond stayed open and the money stayed frozen. And as long as the bond remained alive, Rick received nothing. No payout, no closure, no reward. A perfect deadlock, the leverage pressed heavier each day. My phone buzzed against the desk. Paul's voice was steady but direct. Evan, we need to finalize a resolution. Meet Thursday? I chose my words carefully. What exactly are we talking about? He didn't hesitate. The bond writer has a clause for disputed builds. It's called transfer of improvements. I repeated it slowly, tasting the meaning. Fair, Paul clarified. Precise, his tone like a verdict being read. Ownership of everything built shifts to the rightful landowner. It's the cleanest way to close the bond without demolition. So, I would own the structure? Yes, Paul said without hesitation. We'll draft the documents at no cost. You take over insurance and maintenance, but legally and permanently, the improvements become yours. I pressed again, unwilling to miss a detail. What's the catch? No catch, he replied, voice even and immovable. A standard bond resolution requires HOA agreement. That's all? A lakefront mansion. A glittering pool. Open water views. Built squarely on my property, free. All because someone transposed numbers on a parcel ID. I sat stunned. This was never what I imagined when I bought forgotten acreage at a county auction. Not what I pictured that first day driving out. Yet here it was. The insurance company itself was offering me a multi-million-dollar amenity because demolition or lawsuits cost more. That blank line on the occupancy certificate had given me leverage no one anticipated. Sometimes the system works in strange ways. When you have deeds proof and patience to let gravity do the work. Thursday, 2 o'clock sharp in a drab office conference room. Paul had arranged the formal meeting. At the table, me, Diane, Rick, and the HOA attorney, a sharp-suited man in his 50s with papers neatly stacked. Paul stood at the head, voice calm but commanding. Thank you for coming. The performance bond is at risk. The structure cannot be completed without Mr. Brooks's consent as property owner. The words landed hard, shrinking the room. He continued, firm but measured. If demolition proceeds, the bond covers costs. But it triggers claims against both the HOA and contractor for fraudulent filings and unauthorized work. The attorney scribbled as Paul listed figures. Demolition between $60 or $80K, covered by the bond but exposing the HOA to civil liability, Rick's firm to claims, and both to possible legal action. The room grew heavy. Then Diane slid an envelope across the polished table. Settlement for the boundary issue. $10,000. In exchange, you sign a lot line adjustment so we can finish. I shook my head. Not interested, she leaned in. 15, I met her eyes, voice steady. This isn't about money. Her frustration snapped through her words. Then what do you want? My land, all of it. Exactly as I bought it. Had I spoken the rest? How she swore in writing she owned my land, authorized construction without my consent, and now tried to buy her way out for the cost of a used car. She might have broken then and there. Her hands pressed against the table, her face tight, unwilling to yield, yet knowing the fight was done. I let silence do its work. Paul opened his folder, pulling a crisp document. Here's the option under the bond. When a project can't be finished on disputed land, we execute transfer of improvements. He slid the papers to the center. This bill of sale moves all structures, fixtures, and improvements on parcel 4723 to Evan Brooks at zero cost. Bond then closes. Shaw released. Rick's contract terminated. His tone carried finality. Diane's voice cracked, raw with panic. You're giving him the entire project for free? Paul's calm never wavered. The alternative is demolition plus fraud charges for the affidavit and civil trespass. This is the least costly path. The attorney leaned forward, voice heavy with authority. Miss Mercer, refusal exposes the HOA to fraud charges, reserve-funded demolition, and damages over $200,000. Assignment is best. They built on his land. Now it becomes his. Rick, silent until then, finally spoke. For the record, my contract with the HOA was signed March 8th, but construction started before the ARC vote on March 12th. The attorney snapped his head up. You started before approval? Rick nodded. Diane said the vote was just a formality. Told me it was fine to begin. The attorney turned to Diane. Is that true? She stared at the table, lips pressed tight. Silence. Rick had thrown her under the bus. On record, she had authorized spending before approval, deepening liability. The attorney whispered urgently. Diane nodded, slowly lifted the pen. Her hand hovered above the line, trembling. 10 seconds, 15, nearly 20. Then she pressed down, the M jagged in her name. She set the pen aside, folded her hands, breathing shallow, eyes downcast. Small, fragile, almost pitiful. For a second I nearly pitied her, almost. But then I remembered. She swore under oath that she owned my land. She lied. She authorized work without checking a thing. This wasn't misfortune. These were consequences. The documents were signed. The bill of sale recorded every word. All improvements on parcel 4723 transferred to me. Price 0. Bond closed. Shaw released. Rick's contract voided. Paul notarized each page, slid stamped copies across the table. Done. Walking out, Paul joined me in the lot. Submit final paperwork to John Carter today. He'll schedule inspection next week for the occupancy certificate. I nodded. For the first time, the storm felt over. That's it? I asked. That's it, Paul confirmed. The structure is legally yours. You'll need insurance, maintenance, utilities, but yes, Evan, you own it. I sat in my car holding the signed papers. Across the lot, Diane and the attorney whispered. Rick paced on his phone, already scrambling. A mansion. A pool with sweeping views. On my land, free. Because of one missed parcel digit and one unsigned line, I drove home slowly, replaying the outcome. An hour later, an email from John arrived. Final inspection scheduled Thursday, 9 a.m. Bring deed and assignment documents. Congratulations on your new ownership, Mr. Brooks. Thursday morning, skies clear, lake glinting beyond the trees. John met me at the gate. The red stopwork tag still sun-faded. Ready for walkthrough of the structure on your property? Let's do it, I said. We toured. Framing, electrical, plumbing, pool equipment, stonework shining by the lake. All up to code. You understand you'll handle taxes, maintenance, insurance? John asked. Understood, I confirmed. He pulled the certificate, filled in my name, signed, stamped, and handed it over. Congratulations. Mr. Brooks, the structure is officially yours. I looked down at the paper. Proof of ownership for a building I never planned to buy, but now held outright. $1 million accident sealed with ink 3 days later. Another email, community access request. Evan, now that the amenity on your parcel is complete under your ownership, the HOA would like to discuss limited use for members on summer weekends. We could draft a shared use agreement with liability coverage. Signed, Diane Mercer. I read it 3 times. She wanted me to let the HOA use the pool on my property, built without my consent, now legally mine because of her mistakes. The audacity was almost impressive. My reply was simple. Diane, I'll consider hosting community events on an invitation-only basis. For now, the property remains private. 11 weeks later, the truth spread. Diane Mercer under investigation for ownership fraud. The district attorney opened a probe into her false affidavit, possible perjury charges. The HOA scrambled. Emergency meeting. Homeowners outraged over misused funds. An audit revealed she spent $153,000 without board approval. She was removed as treasurer, stripped as ARC chair, barred from serving for 10 years. Facing a civil class action, her personal assets at risk. Rumors she planned to sell and move away, Rick's firm blacklisted for falsified plans. Barred from county projects 2 years. Lost contracts when clients learned of the stop work order. Insurance premiums spiked. Settled claims for reduced payment. Paul's company resolved cleanly through assignment. No loss. New policy. Independent verification required on all future projects. No one destroyed them. Paperwork did. Diane lost status, faces charges. Rick's business faltered. All because she signed one document without confirming ownership, and he trusted her word instead of verifying. Consequences, not revenge, gravity. I changed the gate locks. Commissioned a sign, private property, forest and shoreline lot, community welcome by invitation only, mounted it beside the framed certificate of occupancy. I kept the red tag too, folded neatly into my toolbox with the expired permit and false affidavit. Every scrap a piece of the story. Someday I'll look back at it. One transposed digit, one lapsed access permit, one blank signature, one notarized lie. Those small oversights cost Diane her title and Rick his contracts, while handing me a mansion with a pool for nothing. The survey pins still stand in the woods, unchanged. Proof of where the lines are. Late afternoon sun spilled through branches, pool water glassy, shoreline glinting. Survey tape fluttered like a quiet flag. I sat by the pool, coffee in hand, watching the light strike the stone and glass. From where I sat, I could see the southern pin still standing, same as day one, not just metal and dirt. Proof that boundaries don't bend, that deeds outweigh dreams. By the lake, the greatest amenity wasn't the pool. It was how expired paperwork and one yellow envelope accomplished what shouting never could. Deeds outlast dreams. Bonds just need to close. I never raised my voice. Never sued. Never stepped into court. I just built a paper trail and let gravity take its course. Now I sit with a 3-story mansion and infinity pool overlooking the lake. On land I bought at auction for $18,000. Cost to build, 0. Cost to prove ownership, about $40 in certified mail and a patient camera bolted to a tree. Not bad for a day clearing brush. Camera pans, pines to waterline. Toolbox with the old tag certificate framed on the wall. Survey pin sharp in the dirt. Then me, coffee in hand by the pool, sign posted at the gate, shoreline stretching. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the right form filed at the right time. And sitting there with coffee by the water, I realized fierce battles aren't won with fists or shouting. They're won with patience, proof, and stubbornness no one can shake. Maybe the lesson is simple: paper outweighs concrete.